right, welcome to this week's FHIR Analytics Working Group meeting. So on the agenda for today, we'll just go over the docket quickly. So in terms of group organization, we're still definitely looking for folks to lead or join a couple of work streams. So I want to put that, I'm going to keep reminding everybody to help recruit for this group, the work we're doing, but also some of these other work streams. You can take a look at the collaboration tracker for any details. And for the past couple of weeks, we've been talking about Parquet on FHIR, and I don't know if we have any updates on that, John. For my end, I went through last week's discussion and then added a list of questions, open questions that came up in our discussions on the little write-up that I did previously. So I'll put that in the chat. You folks can take a look at it. I'll put it in the notes as well. So if anybody wants to start looking at that offline. But John, anything you wanted to say or discuss, any status updates on, you had a couple of ideas that you were thinking of working on for this week.
Yeah, so I think currently in progress, adding a whole bunch of content to the spec around all the problem statement and all the rest. And the profile idea, sort of if there is the possibility to have this sort of comprehensive versus focus schema, what are the definitions of those things and how would that all work and what would the characteristics of each of those things be? So really just writing down on paper a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about just to make it a little bit more concrete. And yes, there's lots of to-do items on the implementation side of things. So that'll have to be a bit of a slow burn. Yeah, so I've kind of been doing that in parallel to also doing a little bit of implementation work on the API side of things so that I can sort of get my head around that and contribute to the conversation in a useful way.
Yeah, great. I mean, we sort of have two things kind of going in parallel here. So, the more folks who can join up and help out would be great. John, just a question. Are you working on your spec in GitHub or the document that I just posted? Where are you putting things?
So I've just been working through the document that you posted. But once we're sort of happy with that, it would be great to sort of put that back into a pull request and update that main document. I don't really know where that document should eventually live. Currently it's in the AEHRC GitHub, but we could put it wherever, but that's kind of wide open to whoever wants to collaborate on it. Just let me know and I'll add you, but very open to moving it to wherever is the best home.
Yeah, I agree. This is one quick thing. Yeah, so yeah, I think everybody can work on the HackMD document. I think it's just the most convenient in terms of this sort of narrative work, and then moving it over to GitHub when we have a good draft sounds totally fine by me. Bashir.
Yeah, I had a look at the doc. Thanks for writing it, both John and Arjun. Also, I had some notes. I had written the notes, but I didn't end up, actually putting it in the doc. So I haven't used this HackMD much. I don't remember if I have ever used it, but is it that, like Google Doc that you can put notes, or do we just edit?
Yeah.
Or do we put comments on the side?
Whatever is most convenient for you. I mean, I think if it's markdown based, and I think I changed it so that you.
Yeah, I have edit rights. The only thing is that I wasn't sure whether we just want to edit or do we want to, in Google Doc, for example, you highlight a section, you can start a conversation on the side.
Yeah.
And then, or you can make a suggestion and someone else can accept your suggestion, or do we just go ahead and edit? Because it would be a little bit hard if everybody just based on their opinion.
Yeah, I think, stay on the safe side, use comments first, have some folks look at it, and then we'll incorporate it. One of us will incorporate it into the text.
I see. Yeah. Okay. So then I will just, it seems that you can actually comment on a specific part. Yeah. I mean, you can highlight and comment. Okay. I'll do that.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. All right. So staying on Parquet on FHIR for a moment, there was another action item, Nikolai. I'm not sure if you got to it, but to take a look at ClickHouse.
Yeah. So I have started, so I've set up all this stuff. Do you guys have this problematic Parquet file so I can play with the different schemas? And check?
Yeah, so we do have some Parquet files. So in the Parquet on FHIR repository, there's examples directory. What we're trying to sort of, so there's a couple of things we could do. So one of the things is, is it possible relative to say something like DuckDB to smooth out the missingness of the focus schema, So I've got some examples of how we've done that in Spark, and we can sort of try and do that sort of a similar thing. And then the other thing is like performance. So that's more like what Dan and Bashir were looking at. So they've got some examples there about that sort of show where DuckDB kind of breaks down in query planning and that sort of stuff. And so we could also kind of replicate that into ClickHouse and just see how it compares.
Yeah, sure. I will share the repo with some examples, and then we can play. Yeah, I probably will be a little bit closure code, but I need some repo.
All right, that sounds good. Anything else outstanding for the group for the Parquet on FHIR workstream?
There is one thing that I thought, again, we can move the discussion on the doc, but there is a non-goals section, which is, I think it's like a higher level kind of discussion. Do you mind if we spend like a few minutes on that before going to the next topic?
No, I think that's fine. I mean, it's been on people's minds and we're thinking about it. So yeah, if everyone's okay with that, I'm happy that we could do that.
Yeah, so like in the non-goal section, it says like some of the non-goals like query writer experience, query portability, and ultimate efficiency. So I'm not sure, like when we say, I'm just thinking about that issue that of missing fields and you write SQL and it fails. I think actually that should be a goal. It's not enough. So, I mean, it shouldn't be too hard to write queries against it. Now, we won't have ultimate query portability because different SQL dialects have differences with each other, like especially when it comes to flattening and things like that. But that issue of missing fields, I think that's an important one.
Yeah, I can comment on that. I mean, this was my distillation of the conversations we've been having. So I'm trying to put my editorial slant on this, but the idea there was that I think it was what you said, meaning the fact that there's this error condition, right, with queries that folks cannot sort of a priori know if their query is going to error or not. That I don't think fits in this category. Like that is a top level requirement. That's not like query writer experience. Query writer experience might be something like, the queries are easier to write against nested data or something like that. That's, you know what I mean? Those are, in my mind, very, very different.
I see. So you mean having easy queries is not a goal, but that issue of, missing fields is still in the scope.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think where this comes from more so is the idea of that the Parquet on FHIR specification would smooth out or flatten, right, or alter the structure in such a way that it's easier to write a query and not having to know the dialects. This actually gets into one of the open questions that came up last week, or a concept that you talked about, and specifically, I remember, Bashir, about the idea of having what I was calling, or we were calling, different implementation patterns, right? Does this specification apply both to a kind of direct or translation to Parquet from FHIR with FHIR data? You could somehow potentially massage the schema in some way that allows for easier writing of queries for sort of non-expert developers. And the discussion we had with sort of the conclusion, or one of the points, was that's not a concern at this level for this specification. That's really a concern for SQL and FHIR, right? That's where the experience, like the schema that the query authors are working against, you can alter that for, to make it easier to write queries. That was what I was trying to express there.
Okay, so then it's actually similar to what I perceived from the document, because I think that other pattern of being able to do SQL. So think about someone who doesn't want to deal with SQL on FHIR v2 at all. You know, they don't care about view definitions. They want to get Parquet, let's say, from a FHIR system, and then run SQL on top of that Parquet file, like raw Parquet file, without anything else in between. I think that pattern should be in the scope. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, and yeah, that should be reflected in the open questions and goals. And I know that's your point of view, which I share. In the next iterations of this draft, we're going to make those implementation patterns like a lot clearer and what are the goals there. John?
Yeah, and I think this is part of the purpose of splitting out the comprehensive and focus schema, because I think that these two things have different usage patterns and different goals and different trade-offs, right? So, for example, you can use the comprehensive schema and you can have that experience that you're talking about, Bashir. However, that pushes additional responsibilities onto the thing that builds the comprehensive schema. So the thing that builds the comprehensive schema has to have full knowledge of the FHIR specification, for example. It also means that we have to take a little bit of a haircut on the capabilities of the schema. Like we do have to limit it at some point, like for example, recursion. Whereas in the focus schema, we don't have any limitations. We can have true zero loss. However, that might be desirable for some use cases. So I would say broadly, in the land of SQL on FHIR runners, I believe that it will be possible to do that over focus schemas and get the performance benefits and zero loss benefits and other benefits of that, because it's rolled up into SQL and FHIR runners. And I believe it will be possible to implement that over all technologies. The use case that you're talking about, where I just want a Parquet file, I just want to write my own SQL over the top of that, I think that will be very much the domain of the comprehensive schema. But I think the nice thing about this is that these two things are compatible. So it's not really any big deal if someone's using comprehensive versus focus, because the effort to get from one to the other is actually very low. And you can have a tool that can take a focus schema and turn it into a comprehensive schema, or the other way around, and that's no big deal compared to like trying to integrate between different schemas that different tools are using and different people have come up with that are actually not compatible. So that's kind of what we were trying to get to there, but I don't think we've finished writing about that. I think we've got a lot more work to do to communicate all that.
Yeah, cool. I agree. I mean, almost entirely. The one only minor comment, by the way, why did you choose recursive level 6? Because I think that's huge. So our default is 1.
I agree. So in Pathling, we use 3. It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because, yeah, I don't think it should be like a parameter. I think it should be hard-coded, basically. But what the right value is, I don't know. I kind of feel like in Pathling, we chose it based on, you know, practicality on what power users would ever want to use. If you're putting it into a specification, I guess I'm conscious that we don't want to preclude use hardly at all. 6 is huge. Maybe it's more like 3 or 4 or something, but no, that is a little bit of a tricky one.
All right. Any more comments or thoughts on the Parquet and FHIR section? Okay. Well, let's move on then. You're on deck with the next phase of the API discussion.
Yeah, so I just, like after the break, I try to attack it like one more time. So from fresh, and I will work on like stuff from previous discussion, but I put like API MD into repo for SQL on FHIR. The build is broken. I will fix it. So I don't know, GitHub breaks pages, and the terminology server was like down for half day. So, but it will be built, so you can watch. You can see it on a GitHub. So the My first idea, probably to approach API, we need clear understanding of use cases. So I just listed few use cases. So the first is a discovery. And as Graham said, so we probably can use capability statements. So and we want to discover what operations are supported. We may discuss if the view definitions are hard-coded into the server, how to distinguish between like hard-coded and dynamic view definitions for the server. As well, we can discover, we should somehow decide how we discover like output formats, yeah? And I will work, so this is like standard endpoint metadata, and we will work on this. So the client can go to the system and discover what are capabilities of this system. So I described this bulk export for reporting and analytics use case, so we kind of understand this. So the client issues the request to export data, so the server processes it asynchronously, and then the client can load the data. So that's what we discussed. But I added like couple of interesting more use cases. So the first, that like real-time evaluation. So it may be good for debugging view definitions, but as well I can see use cases where it will work. So the idea that the server can start streaming result. This result can be full result if server is really capable to stream stuff. Because async is good, but working with async is really complicated. So, and probably providing like synchronous interface would be nice as well. So the one stuff, yes, that you can, for example, if you like doing this per patient, so not so much data, yes. So you will like filter it by patient, and you want to get all blood pressures of this specific patient. I can imagine that some like Python code may use this real-time API to query, to request the like flattened representation. Another and kind of important use case for us, I think we can focus on it some, because like it's authoring and debugging view definitions. It will use the same endpoints. So the idea, like you posting view definition and you getting instant response. And that's, I think we have this view definition builder, and if we would be able to connect the view definition builder to different runners. And that could be nice, I think, because people will be able to, you probably seen what Brian did with the FHIR lab, where you can change engines and run this stuff. So I think that we can like extend the view definition builder to do the same if we will have like standard API. So the people may connect, like I can create the switches between servers, like public endpoints, and then people may run like different runners with the same view definitions. So, and the final use case, it's kind of black box use case, which includes like queries. The idea that the client submit the job with a bunch of views and bunch of queries, and eventually it will get the result. So you don't care how it will work, because in the first bulk export API, so there's still a lot of details, so that you have to go load these files, load them into a database, or like running Athena or like Spark. But if the people really interested in the final result, so it just can send like set of view definitions and the queries, and eventually get the like result of the queries. So it's a kind of magical black box, but I think that it's kind of nice scenario. So what do you think about these scenarios? What other scenarios you see for API? And
so
then
last scenario, can you explain? The last scenario has like a SQL query in it?
Yeah, so I still thinking about like query resource, and then you're putting set of SQL expressions into some resource, and you bundle view definitions with the queries. You send all this stuff to the server, and then server do everything. And then you're just getting response with the result of the queries, because people usually like, let's say like some kind of report or like quality dashboard or the metrics. So, and here we like, this is topest level of abstraction. Yes. So the system just provide you the way to do that, and you're getting final result. So what's going on inside, you don't care. You're just getting result. And I think it's kind of nice pattern to interact.
So this overlaps with some of the work I did. I missed last week, but I was working on some of the more of the publishing side, but I also took a pass at defining an operation for executing SQL.
And maybe you have an operation where you just say, calculate me everything and like, and ping me when result is ready, or like polling for result.
Well, maybe after I could share my screen. I don't want to do it
Okay,
too.
yeah, let's do this.
Steve has a question.
It's probably along the same lines. We've done a lot of work on the bulk execution of view definitions, and so maybe we could return to that after Brian discusses what he's talking about.
Okay, I'll walk through this and maybe see my screen.
Yep.
So I was thinking about I think it's a different work stream. It's about this lifecycle management of view definitions. And so I thought of it as in two different contexts. There's a context if you're developing view definitions as part of an IG, and that's basically you're using the IG publisher and the HL7 tooling to create a FHIR package. And in that package, there are SQL on FHIR view definitions, shareable view definitions, tabular view definitions, whatever. Maybe in the future, query definition resources. And so the first thing is, right, you need to depend on SQL on FHIR. It's an oddly spelled ID, by the way, with all these hyphens in it. I don't know who came up with that. I don't remember coming up with that. But anyway, and if you're doing that, you basically create your view definitions very much like we're creating in the current specification IG, but you wouldn't mark them as examples. They'd be marked as definitions because the IG publisher should not consider them example output. They should be knowledge artifacts. They should be definitional. If you're not using IG publisher and you still want to make a FHIR package, you'd have to create manually package JSON file with the metadata in it and then all the resources. And when you publish them, it becomes a tarball. So if you look at like your FHIR cache, you could see that the layout of the package is there's a package JSON that's basically just looks like an NPM package, and it has the directories in it. In this case, it has all of the, in this case, this is the SQL on FHIR IG, but if you had another package ID, it lists all these out. And since FHIR packages are built on top of NPM, at the end of the day, this becomes a tarball and sent to a registry. Publish time, you can put that tarball into an artifact repository. If it's not a public one, like the registry, the FHIR registry, you can run your own, or you can get it to work with Artifactory or whatever else you want. And that then allows the FHIR package API for downstream distribution. Of course, you can use FHIR REST API if you wanted to. Perhaps view definitions get put together in a FHIR transaction bundle and you post that up to a service. They're not published with the FHIR package context, then obviously you can't distribute them with a FHIR package API. So that would be a trade-off that you could make when you're doing that. At distribution time, there's the FHIR package API, which is basically a subset of NPM. So you can use curl NPM client or the various HL7 tooling to list your package of view definitions as a dependency, and it would just work. The end of behind the scenes, it's downloading those tarballs for your system to be able to reason about them. And if you have a FHIR REST API, the way we're doing it in CRMI is all knowledge artifacts are canonically identified by their canonical URL and version, because the logical ID, the slash like ID on a FHIR server is really up to that FHIR server to mint. So that's not a universal way to refer to anything. You're supposed to use the canonical identifiers, business identifiers, which are the URL and version. And since especially shareable view definition requires those, that would be a way to download the view definition content for a specific view definition that you'd like to use. Lastly, if you wanted to get all of, say you're publishing a package of view definitions and you have 10 of them and you want to download them all together, we talked about this last time. You could put them in a library and call package on the library, or if you've published a package, you could use the FHIR CRMI package operation. In this case, you'd call it in FHIR, the closest thing to a package is the implementation guide. So if you know the implementation guide's canonical URL and version, you can call $package on it. And in this case, you'll get a bundle definition. You'll get a FHIR bundle with actually with everything in that FHIR package. The package operation also has a way to filter out resources. So if you only wanted view definitions, you could do this. And this would basically be a REST API way to download that package and using that CRMI package operation. And then lastly, I took a first pass at an execute operation, which is, I think, similar to the last or maybe not the last case that Nikolai had. I don't know what the name would be. I just call it execute, but maybe that's a terrible name.
Yeah, we
But
call it runner, so I think the run is a better
yeah,
name.
and binary unfortunately is here because view definition doesn't exist as a FHIR resource, so the tooling complains. So pretend that this word binary says view definition because it wouldn't actually be binary. Again, you have business identifiers, URL version. You could pass in the view, this should say view definition as well, same problem. And this follows all CRMI knowledge artifact like processing semantics, where you can call an execution of a remote view definition. You have to identify the view definition first or provide it. And to identify it, it's a combination of URL and version, or you could presumably post in your payload the whole view definition. And we do this sometimes with other operations, whether it's SQL or plan definitions for doing CPG work. Subject might not, and counter probably shouldn't be here. I probably should have deleted these. I thought I did. But I do think there's parameters that you might want to pass into your view definition. So in this, we would use the same pattern that you use in CQL, and you could pass those in to the view definition. In the other operations, the analogy is you might tell the server to use the data that you already have. So in this case, the patient that you're running the view definition, or the patient data that you want to run the definitions on behalf of, are already on the server. In theory, you could post them up. This would probably be more of a debug use case. You wouldn't really put population data in a FHIR bundle and upload it. That wouldn't really work. Lastly, we're supporting in the other operations and knowledge artifacts, specifying a data endpoint, and that would tell your execution engine where to go to get the data to run the view definition about. And I kind of contemplated the same things that Nikolai did, although he was much more exhaustive. I don't know what the return would be. Is it a binary? Is it based on accept headers? Does it return a running job? So these are the open questions. But I was at least trying to think of how we could move towards defining a FHIR-like operation for executing view definitions that would be similar to the other operations in FHIR, like clinical reasoning more broadly.
Yeah, that's resonate a lot with. I will show the rest, and I think we probably have to find some time and sit down together and unify it with what you're doing with the SQL stuff, at least that can look similar to people by naming and by other stuff. Yeah, John.
Yeah, so you've got a pattern in there. Is this right? That the server that's executing it knows about the view definition, but it goes and gets the data from somewhere else and then executes it. Is that right?
It's possible, and that the server might not even have the view definition preloaded. You could pass that in. So the idea is that you could have any of those arrangements, and based on the parameters, you could support different use cases. Like you can imagine a system that you're debugging, you might send in the newly formed work in progress view definition with fixture test data over and over again. There's no data on the server. There's no view definitions being persisted on the server. That is a kind of use case. The other end of the spectrum would be running it against a population of millions of patients. The data is either already on that system, or through that data endpoint, you could tell it where to get that data. And the view definitions, maybe in that case, have been already persisted on the server, and you're merely referring to them by their business identifiers. That's kind of how we're doing it with
similar ideas
CQL
in my version
and stuff.
Yeah.
And running quality measures. It's kind of a same a pattern from a FHIR operation definition standpoint.
And can you share the link where this like similar operation are described for SQL and CPG?
I can send those. There's a couple. There's the quality measure ones, and then there's the apply operation for clinical decision support guidelines. We're trying to align the parameters in CRMI. We have profiles that define so that everyone's spelling these parameters differently. Some people call it resource. Some people literally have the parameter like view definition. And we're trying to get some alignment across SDC quality measures. But yeah, I'll put those links in the chat right now.
Yeah, this is all excellent work. I was looking at our implementation of this. So we have in our product, and it's not actually released yet, so it's perfect timing to sort of figure some of this out. We have the concept of export job, which I think is more along the lines of Nikolai, what you're talking about. We added a few other features that arguably should belong elsewhere. The one idea is you can, run this view definition now, which is, I think we call that an instant job, or you can run it on a scheduled basis or we also call it continuous. And in the continuous, the scheduled basis is run on a cron based string. It's, other styles, we might want to put that in a different system and call what you just showed, Brian. But I think that for us to do the continuous approach, we'd also probably need like a as of date, like run this view definition on the data as of the last 3 days or something like that. So I don't know if what I saw
this
there.
is a very interesting concept, yeah, because people usually not doing it once, yes, so they need to get updates and all this stuff, and we should think that there's still problem if the result of it is a files on a S3 bucket, you will do with the updates and deletes, yes, so this is kind of tricky part because
That's harder, yeah.
You could not just add more files with the pages with the new data, yes, so because if it's changed, and that's kind of hard semantic, I don't know. So how Delta Lake doing this, I don't know, John or Bashir, how these updates are published. They have a kind of, I remember something was in a Databricks about this, and probably in a Sparkland, how to distribute updates. But this is really interesting space to explore about getting real, not real time, but updated representation.
Yeah. And Nikolai, I didn't quite follow one thing you said when you're describing that fifth scenario. You said that the SQL queries would be in there too. Everything we've done to date, sort of in and around these APIs, we sort of haven't really contemplated the packaging of the associated SQL queries. Right now, they're just sort of off on their own.
Mm-hmm. But so the idea is quite simple. So when we flatten data, then we quite close that ANSI SQL will be compatible with these views, or at least you may have you may publish dialects, yes. And there's create resource, make element which is called expression, call it SQL, and just put ANSI SQL inside. So maybe with some extra information about output format and stuff like this, but looks like it is nice artifact to distribute with the view definitions, at least as an example of SQL, but maybe we can different dialects which you could put into the same SQL. We don't have too much databases, yes, so if you we can publish 5 of them. There's a bunch of engines which are provide ANSI SQL on top of different databases. I forgot all these names, but they try to transpile to different dialects. And I think this is quite nice if you're getting not only view definition, but quality dashboards, metrics, and reports together. And then if you pack it together and send it, say, execute, and get the result without thinking that there's some bucket I have to download and run. So especially from some kind of reporting or metrics scenarios, like SQL doing, you just loaded all the stuff, probably maybe even addressed as IG. You just say, execute this IG, yes, and the hospital execute and report metrics back.
I was totally getting confused with the bulk export API and Smart when you were showing this before. So have you thought of using that API? Smart and FHIR bulk export?
Yeah. Well, I can work. So I sketched a little bit. So here it is close to what the guys are doing. So yeah, so the idea, you setting request with the parameters, you may filter by, you may provide list of view URLs, you may provide library or IG, maybe that's what you describing. You may provide a bundle with the view definitions or URL where to get this bundle. And potentially this URL could be $package from CRMI server. So I can just point the bundle to the $package from CRMI server. It will export bundle with all view definitions. Then you have to provide the format. I don't know, we can discuss, should we use short names like CSV or use mimia types? Probably they well defined, so maybe it's much easier to use mimia types. You may provide identifier, it's optional, but maybe useful to identify. I was thinking about black boxes like source and destination. That's probably similar to what you showed with a data source. So that this is up to server how to treat it. If you have multiple sources and multiple destinations, So this is, you can negotiate with your specific implementation and say, take from this source if multiple sources available, and some source maybe like your data, yes, like your local data, and some kind of destination, maybe like bucket name, but it's like out of specification. We just provide these parameters so that people can use it without like strong semantic. And definitely probably like patient and group, like in bulk export API could be useful, because I can imagine like give me all flat conditions and like allergies and I don't know, observation of this patient. This may work quite nice. I think like it's like dollar everything stuff.
Yeah, we should ask Dan to come back because he works on this spec.
Yeah, definitely. We already discussed this, and so we will like we're working on this and then doing a lot of contribution. And yeah, so you're posting stuff.
Isn't the source, like, that's going to be very specific to the view runner, right?
Yes, but it is like how it's like just a token like in OAuth 2.0. So you could put anything there, but we just tell you, so if you have multiple sources and like need any source selection, it could be URL with like, I don't know, ND-JSON bulk export, but it's up to server how to treat it. And the same about destination. So if export can like switch buckets, just give the name of this bucket, and or it could be, I don't know, table or something else. So just
it might be useful to indicate which ones of these are, you know, opaque identifiers. I think that's what you're getting at, Brian. Or
Well, I mean, we run into this too, and my opinion is that it's okay to have out-of-band configuration of your systems, because really at the end of the day, what you're trying to interop on is the view definition itself. Like, I don't want my app to have to encode nuances of a specific view runner's source GUIDs or whatever.
We are not encoding this again, so we're just giving the names, so at least like different implementation will reuse this name. So we recommend to use this name. Okay, you can add extra parameters, but if you have like choice of sources and choice of destinations, you may use these parameters. Like OAuth doing this in specification, they just give you like place to put something, yeah. So and what's inside doesn't matter. It's up to implementation, but at least like the name is standard. So and
right. I mean, I think you are missing what we call parameters. Like, don't view definitions, can't you pass parameters into them for some of those variables?
What kind of parameters? Like,
I thought the
like
view
configuring
definition.
specific view definition.
Yeah. So when I call the view definition, I might pass in a start date or an end date or something, and it would interpolate it or use it. Isn't there support in view definitions for that now?
I don't think this is a like view runner stuff. In view definition, you have a filter, yes. So we don't have like some extra parameters, but we may discuss this. For me, it's like a splitting. So ideally, we probably will put it as extension into view definition, but maybe, I don't know, we didn't introduce parameters for view definition. Maybe we can think that way and do this, but okay, so we can discuss about parameters. So, but then should I like say this view definition name will be assigned these specific parameters, and this view definition will get different parameters, or they will share?
No, I mean that's when you can actually have the API tell you can do a data requirements operation on the view definition, and that return would tell you what parameters you need to pass it. So you could.
Yeah, we don't have this idea. So I understand that SQL need this, but we like didn't discuss it that we have a like parameter. This is interesting to think, but so it's not yet like discussed. So we don't have extra parameters for that, but maybe they will appear in the real life. I don't know. So we can discuss. Yeah, Bashir, Steve.
I think Steve was first.
Yeah, I can tell you what we did, and we did it just from a lack of this discussion. We took like what Brian was chatting about, the export operation and all the wonderful features that you have there. There's things like since. So we built on top of the export operation. So I think all we really added was a single view definition parameter. I think that was it. And then we honor all the other things, like there's type. We actually force type. There's elements there. Well, we ignore elements. So there's some like matching up to do there if we want to. I think one approach here, because right.
This is So this is not operation on a specific view definition. This is operation on like resource type level.
On the whole resource type. Okay.
Yeah, so and you can list views. And this is a big question, how we can address view definition. So here I just suggested 3. So the Brian tell about like potential IG, or we can just bundle them into, as I tell, like dollar package from CRMI URL. And maybe we can like add specific package. So then you can like specify the package and say run all views, view definition from this package, or maybe with a selector.
Okay, I get that. That works. If we can add since, that would be helpful.
Yeah. I worked a little bit on, maybe I mistake, but in bulk export FHIR API, you can raise it through the GET request. I think this is like contradict to HTTP semantic. So
if you study some of the implementations, what we followed was actually how happy they're all laid out there, but the parameters we followed the sort of a happy implementation style for that, which uses
happy
parameters.
Doesn't support GET, yes, for experts or do.
Right. They said in their documentation they chose to use parameters because it's more convenient for the client tools, just load up a parameter object and send it in.
Yeah, and I think the same, because and I think that we should post, we should like we shouldn't use get, because this is changing state. So in HTTP semantic it should be post. And after that, I work it a little bit on then the server will return you the URL to poll result. This is exactly how the bulk export working. But then I work it a little bit like make much more nice the responses that use status codes. So if it's in progress, we can return accepted, and we can return, for example, the progress. If, I don't know, do the guys, and I don't think that bulk export have a progress stuff, but so we can return progress, we can return this like time when it started, the end date will be estimated date of the end. Again, so it's optional for the server to support, but this may help to build nice user interface for this like asynchronous operation. When it's ready, it returns like a much bigger. It's kind of similar to what guys did, but I think that if we introduce, let's say, view instead of type, because we are not returning types, yes, in terms of FHIR. The like bulk export return types, but we are returning views. So probably we can like return view, we can return name, we can make like paged return, probably introduce page, and then people can like understand that like observation was exported as a multiple pages. So and there
How
could
do you
be
map
like
the names to the views? Where do you map the name to the view?
the views have a name as name.
That's the name of the view.
Yeah, this is the name of the view. So, but the view is a canonical URL of the view. So it's not clear from here, but I mean canonical URL of the view, and the name probably will be much simpler for other guys to work with the names, because view have a name. So then, if it's failed, we can return this stuff, and probably we have to return original parameters, which were like when the job was started. It will really help to debug. Again, so optional timing, and we can use the code. It could be like, we can probably not only like unprocessable entity, but maybe 500 as well, if it's really failed. If it was canceled, and I didn't describe the cancel API, so here's the cancel API. If it was canceled, we can return gun, and this stuff, like again, with the parameters, with the type, start, end. So it's I don't know, Steve, what do you think? Is it hard to like support such type of API?
No, let's see. It's a lot of the same concepts. We implemented this in different spots. We delete. We actually delete files in that case. In the other implementation of the import implementation, the duration or the percent complete is actually in a header. So we probably want to unify, pick one or the other. But it looks nice.
Yeah, and I will work and unify this with it then. If you have like any ideas, welcome to GitHub. So I give up on Google Docs and all this stuff. So let's go to GitHub with a pull request and just.
So we are at time.
We're at time. I'm sorry.
Just a quick note.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I guess, I mean, to Brian's earlier question, I don't think view definitions are parameterized, but I thought that we try to follow the bulk export and, for example, include since. And, yeah,
Mhm.
but
Yeah, I think this is a clear that it should be post operation because get can be cached. I don't know how you can cache the get.
like bulk export, you can. I mean, it has to be get, and you can additionally support post as well. But it has
But
to
this
be.
I see the conflict with the HTTP semantic. So I think so we can rethink and then like force post because so this is a like stateful operation and I think it should be post.
All right, so maybe we should discuss this next time.
We
Yeah,
should
I think
discuss
I'll-
this then because I still curious why the guys implemented get. So this is like breaking all the REST rules, like getting like you can start like Starship with a get. Yeah.
All right, I'll note that for further discussion after reviewing this. All right, yeah,
Maybe I can go quickly so the guys will look at just 1 minute. Yes. So
Yep.
there's another operation is a run operation. This is, I think we can play with that with our tooling. So because the run operation, it could be like get operation and the post operation. If you want to post the body with the view definition, you're just posting the body. You in accept you may list like we can stream. We're getting immediate response, which could be potentially transfer encoding chunked. So this is again optional for the server, but this can be easily used for debugging tools and for like small data sets, even for the big data sets. To be honest, we were able to in 8box we do support streaming, so you can stream like gigabytes of data because they just stream it and you can store it somewhere. So essentially this streaming like real-time interaction, I think at least for view definition builder and all this stuff, and I call this operation run because we call like view definition runner, so it should run. Yeah. If it would be executor, then we can execute. Okay, guys, feel free to like add comments and maybe just
Yeah, I think that last use case, you might want to have an option to pass patient data in just because when you're debugging, it might be convenient to send the data in at the same time that you're asking to run it.
Yeah, sure.
All right, sounds good. So a couple of to-do, I think the major ones are take a look at Nikolai's documentation on GitHub, add comments. I think that's might be the best source here. And then we want to unify the work that Brian has been doing and the work Nikolai's been doing. So let's get together on Zulip and figure that out probably.
Yeah, and Brian, if you have a time, maybe let's spend half hour together.
Yeah, if you want to schedule something off of this meeting slot. And
Steve, if you can like make a summary what you did and what like your findings.
Yeah, what form do you want me to just make like a PR on this comments on the API.mdf file?
Yeah.
All right. Does that work for everybody?
And my plans, like John suggested, so I will try to implement in JavaScript like toy server, which will do all of this stuff, and then we will be able to connect it to view definition builder, and then I hope the other implementation will do the same, so we can build this like view definition lab application.
All right.
Yeah.
How's it going?